On today's show, a jam-packed Houston Rockets media day with lots of standout moments across the board. We'll hear from KPJ himself, who I think comes away the winner of Houston Rockets media day. Talk about takeaways from Silas, from Rafael Stone, Jalen Green, Boban Marjanovic, who wound up stealing the day, stealing the show when he took the podium. All that and more coming up right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start.
The Houston Rockets select Jalen Green and Jabari Smith Jr.
T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal.
Every time I step on that floor, I'm coming.
You're getting somebody who's going to come in with a chip on their shoulder, somebody who's going to come in and compete from day one.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian, a credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Mondays, host of the State of the Rockets podcast, as well as Rockets Watch. Be sure to follow along on Twitter at JT Gatlin, and the show, of course, at Locked On Rockets. We are free and available on all podcast platforms, including YouTube. Just go to YouTube, search Locked On Rockets, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. What an awesome media day from the Houston Rockets. It was jam-packed. 12 interviews, 11 players. It was a whirlwind. I mean, we were zooming through these guys left and right. We've got so much to talk about, but, we're going to talk Kevin Porter Jr., who I think comes away the winner of Rockets Media Day. He looked fantastic. He seemed so mature in his growth, in his answers, some of the things that he discussed. Talk about Silas, Rafael Stone, Alperen Sengun going full-blown with the English in his media availability. Talk about EG, talk about KJ Martin, whose body language was not the best during his heights and weights for this Houston Rockets team. We'll talk about the new listed heights and weights, whether or not we can truly buy into them, believe them, what metrics were used to measure these guys, all of that. But let's start with KPJ, because I think that coming into media day, he is one of, if not the biggest storyline for this Houston Rockets team, right? And he handled it. He handled it with so much poise and grace and maturity. The way that he answered questions, the way that he addressed his contract situation, basically saying, look, he stopped worrying about his contract last year. He has a team that represents him, and they handle that for him. He just comes in and tries to be the best player that he can be. The situation hasn't been weighing on him. And Rafael Stone echoed maybe not similar sentiments, but basically shut down any thought of discussing the contract situation with KPJ. Stone basically said, we don't talk about negotiations. He shut down that line of questioning very, very quickly early in his media availability. So for KPJ, it really feels like he is maturing beyond his years, I should say, really stepping into and embracing that leadership role that this team demands of him and that he needs to embody to find success at the NBA level, right? KPJ talked about being the leader on the floor, right? And having a group of guys looking up to him, right? And the fact that he has to kind of command that group, right? That as when you're the point guard on the floor, you are the one steering the ship. You are the one that is in charge of leading those four other grown men to whatever, to the win, right? To the common objective at hand. And hearing him just speak kind of so candidly about his game, about his role, about his past struggles, about where he is at in his career, talking about the fact that transitioning to the point guard position was like a transition, right? Like opening up a new chapter in his life. And that mentally, right, he has gone through so much. He talked about the fact that, NBA players are viewed sometimes as superheroes, right? As, impervious, as a larger than life, whatever, referencing the fact that, these days with with social media everywhere. It's actually funny in the moment, right? He kind of referenced, he goes, with the media and then he kind of like backtracked. He goes, not you guys. I love you guys. And that elicited a good chuckle out of all of us. But he's talking about, with social media, Instagram, Twitter, all this, everything is so like, there's these players, today's NBA are under such a microscope where we see and hear everything going on with them. Whereas, back in the day, and he referenced, right, like with Michael, if Michael was going through something, Michael Jordan, right, you maybe don't hear about it. You don't see about it, unless it's really bad and really gets out there. But, KPJ was just like, he's talking about, we're just human. We're people, and mistakes happen and, we grow from them. And, he was like, that's something that he's learning, is that he can learn and grow just like, and again, kind of relating it back to us, in the audience as media members, he was like, it's possible for me to learn and grow from you guys, and you guys learn and grow from me. And, because at the end of the day, we're all just human beings. And again, to hear KPJ just speaking so candidly about his growth, about his struggles, about where he's at mentally, about where he's at emotionally with his play, all of that was fantastic. And he and Jalen Green have aspirations and they both kind of echoed this sentiment, right? To be the best backcourt in the NBA. So the sky's the limit for KPJ, and to hear and see all of that, right? That feels really good. At the start of the season, there have been question marks about where he's going to be at, but it's also worth noting, Rafael Stone said that KPJ was the most consistent player this offseason, about getting into the gym, putting the work in, doing the work. And I know that this organization is incredibly high on what KPJ can bring to the table. And it kind of speaks to the position in, where he spoke to the media at, right? He was the final interview of Media Day, and he went longer than any other player, substantially longer. The only Media Day interview that he didn't top as far as time is concerned was the Rafael Stone, Stephen Silas joint interview, which again, that was 2 of them. And so it's usually, customary, the GM head coach interview goes longer than all the player interviews. They go for about anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes sometimes. KPJ went almost, about 16, 17 minutes straight by himself, right? He had a lot to say. He had a lot to share. And I think that the confidence moving forward with him should be at a very high place, given how genuine that interview felt. And again, he's got to still translate the talent to the court, but he talked about things, right? Like, spending last season focusing so much on the outside shooting that he regressed a little bit with his inside game. Talked about the fact that, one of his skills, coming out and in the past was finding angles and finishing in ways that, are kind of unconventional around the basket. And he got away from that last season, right? We've talked about this before. His finishing around the basket was just not what it needed to be. He kind of shied away from contact and didn't really have that as a focal point to rely on in his game. So he said that this offseason, he spent much more time focusing on both sides, right? Making sure that he didn't, abandon one part of his game in favor of another, because he's confident in his shooting now. He understands what he can do there as a catch and shoot threat. He understands what he can accomplish from beyond the 3-point line. So if we get a version of KPJ that can finish at the rim at an elite level, coupled with a KPJ that can kill it from beyond the arc, coupled with a KPJ who understands his role as the leader on the floor and how to that his job is to make everybody else on the floor better, to set the tone for this team, sky's the limit for KPJ. And it might be a better thing to get the extension done sooner rather than later. But coming up, I do want to hit on the other sights and sounds from Houston Rockets Media Day, other standout takeaways, moments, all of that. We're going to get there after a quick message from our friends over at BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all of your football betting info this season. Find all your latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every single game that you can get your hands on. And as always, BetOnline.net remains your continued spot for all of your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every single sport out there. They've got you covered for MLB postseason. NBA is right around the corner. They've got you for all your fighting odds, UFC, MMA, boxing, you name it. They've got you covered over at BetOnline. Right now, you can take a look at who the odds-on favorites are for the NBA title this season. Unfortunately, gag me, the Golden State Warriors, the favorites at plus 575 right now. The Boston Celtics slipping a little bit with all the Ime Udoka stuff going on there. They are in second place at plus 600. The Milwaukee Bucks at plus 700. And then rounding out the top five, the Brooklyn Nets and John Wall's new home, the LA Clippers, at plus 750 apiece. So for all of that and more odds, head over to BetOnline to learn more about the trends in action available to you. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Now, I do want to discuss really quickly the heights and weights that were announced right after Rockets Media Day ended. So the Rockets did formal new press release with updated heights and weights for all the players on the roster. Jabari Smith Jr. is now officially listed at 6'11". Jalen Green and Kevin Porter Jr. both are listed at 6'6". Alperen Sengun is also listed at 6'11". And look, I'm going to be completely upfront. I don't know how strict they were on these measurements, right? Because here's the problem. Jabari at 6'11" is believable. Jalen and KPJ at 6'6" is pretty believable. Alperen Sengun listed at 6'11" is not super believable because I think 6'10" would be a stretch. The only way, right, is because we've seen Alp out there on the floor and we've seen him standing next to other, 6'10", 6'11", 7-footers. And I could, Alp at 6'9", I always hoped and thought, maybe he'd grow another inch or two and be 6'10", maybe 6'11". Maybe they measured him in sneakers versus not sneakers, at the draft, which was the heights that we were running off of last year for a lot of these guys. But even further down the roster, like certain guys have grown, like Josh Christopher being listed at 6'5" is, I mean, Josh Christopher and Eric Gordon are the same height, and EG's 6'3" at most. Jae'Sean Tate being listed at 6'5". Bruno Fernando being listed at 6'10". There are a lot of heights and weights on this roster that I don't necessarily want to put a ton of stock into. It's exciting. This is what my goal is going to be, right? I'm going to be in Lake Charles for training camp. I'm going to do my absolute best to try and get a side-by-side photo shot, whatever, of Jabari and Alp standing next to one another, because if Jabari is just towering over Alperen Sengun, then hey, maybe Alp is 6'11", but maybe it means Jabari's like 7'2". No, I'm kidding, right? These heights and weights are so frustrating because I wish that the NBA had a better baseline and requirements for how to measure them, and that they were more transparent about the measurements, right? Be like, hey, every single height and weight measurement is done under these parameters. That way we know that there is a consistent baseline across the entire NBA and from a year-to-year basis. Because, yeah, these players are young, right? You don't stop growing until you're, if you're a guy, 21, 22 years old. So it's very possible that some of these guys have grown. But as far as some of the comparisons across the roster, I do think there is a little something hinky going on there. But back to Media Day takeaways. Alperen Sengun going all out with his Media Day presser to go straight English the whole way. He sat down and he was like, look, guys, I'm going to do it all in English. In fact, Josh Christopher highlighted during his media availability that he was, Alp was kind of prepping for, coming down, doing the media availability, and was maybe a little nervous about trying to do it all in English. And Josh was like, man, just get out there and say, go speak English. You're fine. Like, he was encouraging him. And, again, they are brothers, Kanki. And so it was cool to see kind of Josh just hyping up Alp with that. But Alp did great. He handled a majority of the availability in English. It was actually really funny. The one question that he kind of stumbled on at the very end of his availability was when somebody asked him, how did you get so good at your English? And he took a minute to orchestrate with his translator, OG, on the Rocket staff to break down the way that he wanted to answer that question. But Alp was fantastic. He spoke about, his, playing overseas, learning from that, the physicality of the game. It's just kind of a different game playing in Eurobasket. He also highlighted, pardon me, he mentioned the fact that he truly believes that one day that this team is going to be the best team in the NBA at some point further down the line. He highlighted the fact that Nikola Jokic is one of his idols, somebody that he, tries to model his game after a little bit. So being overseas, playing against him was a, really cool experience in Eurobasket. I didn't mean to leapfrog Steven Silas because I do think there's an important takeaway there that Steven Silas did mention that the focus, and this kind of ties back into Alperen Sengun and KPJ and Jalen. Steven Silas mentioning kind of that the focus for this year, would offensively at least would still be on Kevin Porter Jr., Jalen Green, that a lot of what we saw at the end of last season would kind of be how they approach this season. And as that relates back to Alperen Sengun, I got the chance to ask KPJ, how do you and Jalen, factor in being the primary ball handlers, handling the rock for a majority of possessions, initiating the offense, but also still factoring in a guy like Alperen Sengun into what you're trying to accomplish, being the fact that he's such a gifted playmaker, passer, creator, offensive hub as well. And KPJ gave a really insightful answer that we want to run back. We're going to discuss it in detail in our next episode with Ali Kambijani, kind of breaking down some of what we learned from Media Day, as well as whatever our takeaways are from day one of Rockets training camp. So that is a lot of good insight there from KPJ as to, and from Steven Silas as to what this team is going to look like this season. A couple other standouts here. Garrison Matthews, aka Garrison Chadthews, with the hair grown out, looks like the Chad meme now. I'm gonna work on photoshopping that expeditiously. But Garrison Matthews continuing to let the hair grow out. He had kind of a quick hitter media availability. Talked about just the fact that, this offseason has been working on, getting his reps up, getting shots up, continuing to work on his game, defensively, really making that a focus. He gained some muscle this offseason, he talked about, which kind of, again, confirms what I was sharing a few weeks back here on LOR, is the fact that Garrison Matthews has been in the weight room, has been working on adding muscle to his frame. So that he can be a bit bigger, not get pushed off his spots as easily on defense, is something that he highlighted and shared. And then Boban Marjanovic. Boban probably stole the show at Rockets Media Day. He walked into the room and immediately, larger than life presence, walks into the room and goes, "Hi, my name is Boban," and just sits at the table. He's like, they're like, "Any questions for Boban?" And Boban's like, "No, they have no questions. They're just here to see me. They're just here to take pictures." And so just a fantastic personality, top to bottom, and truly like the exact type of positive presence that you want in the locker room. Again, I do not think it can be overstated how important the human element of a basketball team is to some of these players. And again, it's not 2K, right? These are living, breathing human beings with complex thoughts and emotions. And when you go through some turbulent, rough patches of the season, having such a radiant positive force as Boban in your corner, on your team, is going to be fantastic for this young Houston Rockets team to have that type of personality in and around the locker room. So coming up, want to hit on all the remaining takeaways, tidbits from Rockets Media Day. Still got to talk about Jabari Smith Jr., Jalen Green. Still got to talk about Jae'Sean Tate, KJ Martin, his unfortunate body language. We're going to talk about all of that coming up here in just one moment. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. We are free and available on all podcast platforms. That's Apple, Spotify, Google, Odyssey app, wherever you get your pods. You can listen to this podcast. Now, let's roll. Let's continue rolling along strong here. We'll go with Jalen Green here first. Jalen, confirmed at the podium that he has gained weight. Talked about the fact that he, as first reported by our good friend Roosh Williams, Jalen, came into last year probably about 172, 173, was gained a little bit of weight as the season went along, but he is officially listed now at, I want to double check, make sure, 183 now is his official training camp listing as far as his weight goes. So the fact that Jalen Green has managed to add some muscle, add some size is fantastic. His game is going to continue to grow as he grows, right? As he adds to his frame, adds to his size. He just talked about, right, working on different things this offseason, working on making his handle tighter, better reads, that kind of stuff. Just kind of, some more of the generic stuff from Jalen Green about what he's worked on this offseason. There weren't, really, honestly, there wasn't a million, and one fantastic standouts from Jalen Green's availability. I will say that he doubled down when asked about what Al Pease said about this team being the best in the league someday. Jalen was just like, that's facts. We are absolutely going to be the best in the league someday. He did talk about, goals for this season, improving defensively, wants to make an all-star appearance. So some lofty expectations for Jalen Green heading into year 2. Jabari Smith Jr., his media availability, he was just, first off, Steven Silas, was praising Jabari defensively, and Jabari himself, he has such a great understanding and self-awareness of what he brings to the table. Talked about his defensive versatility and kind of what he brings to the basketball court. Talked about having a great feel for his defensive strengths, where to be, when to help. The fact that he can move his feet so well defensively to keep up with smaller players. And then probably one of the highlights, I'll put it the second highlight of Media Day, right behind Boban being just Boban. Bill Worrell crashing Media Day, just rolls up, and again, I'm sitting in front row, so I don't see what all's going on behind me, and Bill Worrell pipes up, and I hear Rockets PR staff announce, she goes, Bill Worrell, and I'm like, and it took a lot of willpower not to just spin 180 in my seat and be like, Bill? Bill got the chance, to ask Jabari about his shooting in Summer League, about his release point and the timing of his release, and Jabari said that that's something that he's been working on, is that the speed of Summer League kind of caught him by surprise, and that he has been focused on, offensively, right? Working on his release, getting it quicker, kind of getting that timing down so that at the NBA level, there won't be any issues. But it was really cool to just have, that was some legend stuff right there. Just, Rockets legend Bill Worrell just crashing Media Day and jumping in and asking a question to a player that he is incredibly optimistic about in Jabari Smith Jr. So that was a ton of fun. It was cool, catching up with Bill on the side too. So Jabari, again, great feel for the game, really excited for his potential. Again, if Jabari is actually listed at 6'11", then that is a game changer. Eric Gordon, just talking about the fact that his role, his presence on this team, he feels like he is another coach on the floor for this young Houston Rockets squad. Talking about, just being vocal with the guys, where to be, what to do. And he was asked, right, about his future with this team. The podfather himself, Ben DuBose, asked Eric Gordon about, his contract situation. He's basically got 1 year left effectively. And, has he put any thought into it? And EG was upfront about it. He was like, yeah, I love Houston. I love being here. And he mentioned the fact that, the plan was when he originally came here years ago and signed here, that the plan was for Houston to be his last stop. When he was asked about, would you want to retire in Houston? So EG loves it here, right? EG is bought into this idea. I do think, again, he wants clarity. He wants some level of confirmation as to his standing within the organization. And at this point, I think he's absolutely, the exact type of vet you want to keep around for a rebuild of this caliber. And he's gone through a lot of change, right? From where the Houston Rockets organization was when he signed here to where he is now. And he's been a pro's pro throughout all of it. So shout out to EG. Couple more names here before we get to KJ Martin, but Jae'Sean Tate, I had the chance to ask Jae'Sean how he would describe the Rockets culture or the culture that they're trying to build and cultivate and grow. And Jae'Sean said electric. He said that they're going to be the team that everyone hates to play against. And both Silas and Stone echoed that same sentiment about being the team nobody wants to play against, being the team that nobody looks forward to on the calendar, being the team that is competitive, right? If they're playing hard every single night, that's how they're kind of watching for it and evaluating development of this team, right? If they are fighting hard, playing hard, there's going to be some games where they play fantastic and they lose. And there's going to be some games where they don't play as well and the ball doesn't go in and they win. But if they're playing hard every single night and if other teams are really having to fight to beat them, if they're not walking out and just, it's a snooze fest and they're getting clobbered, then that's how they're kind of watching for this development. But Jae'Sean, kind of went on to say, right, it's going to be like a track meet, right? When the first unit squad is done, they have a second unit team ready to jump in and get off to the races and keep things running. And Jae'Sean talked about the fact, right, that defensively, right, that why be, overly complicated on offense when defensively they can just get a stop, get an outlet pass, and get an easy bucket on the other end, right? So there is a lot of stock being placed into the defensive side of things, I think, from this team, and that is going to be a huge focus for this team, is being good defensively so that they can then get out and transition and use those young legs and really run and gun and be good at what they're good at, right, which is attacking and transition. It's not to say that they're going to ignore the, half-court offense, ignore the offensive side of the ball, but placing a lot of stock into what they're doing defensively. And then I followed up and asked Josh Christopher the exact same question, and his answer was kind of interesting, but Jae'Sean did have a couple more points. He was asked about his shooting, right, how he's worked on his shooting stroke this offseason, and there was a bit of a red flag almost in his answer, which was the fact that he talked about the fact that he's been working, getting a lot of reps in on the shooting, right? Working with his trainer, Stefan Martinez, who's been on this very podcast before. Shout out to Stefan for his time. Got to get him back on here soon. But focusing especially on the corners, right? Working on those corner 3-point shots. So, but then Jae'Sean also went on to say that he isn't the player, like he is. Has succeeded as a player, as a basketball player, without having the shot to this point in his career, which is kind of a red flag because it's like, all right, well, you need the shot, man. Come on. So love JT, love Jae'Sean, but I hope the shot is true when we see it translate to the court. Josh Christopher. When I asked him the same question about building the culture here, Josh also used the word electric, and we don't know if there's going to be a brand new motto for this season. We don't know if they're going to keep light the fuse or if they're transitioning to something new. But the fact that both Jae'Sean and Josh chose the word electric has me feeling like electric or electricity or something is going to be the new team motto slogan for this season. I don't know for certain yet, but if they circle around and they say, yeah, this year's motto is we're going to be electrifying or electric or I don't know, light the electricity. No, I kid, but we'll see if that actually, amounts to anything or if they were both just kind of, vibing on 100 and, matching the same wavelength. And speaking of vibing, Josh Christopher was talking all about the vibes, right? So the vibes were immaculate with Josh Christopher for certain during his media availability. He also talked about he's dropping merch line soon. So he teased it on Twitter the other day, and we kind of doubled down. Somebody asked him about his fashion sense. And I got the chance to kind of follow up with him and be like, hey, so where's the merch line at? So be on the lookout for that from Josh. But final guy here, and I want to make sure I didn't miss anybody. Yeah, we got through everybody. KJ Martin. Oh, and Tari Eason. Look, I love Tari to pieces, but his media availability was quick, short, sweet, to the point. Happy to be here. Happy to be in Houston. Excited to be here. That was basically it. Which is funny because there were a couple people that predicted that Tari Eason would have the quote of the day for media day. So KJ Martin, whose body language was anything but great during his availability, slouched back in his chair, was super and multiple times basically reiterated, I'm just here to do my job. I'm just here to do my job. Any contract stuff, any, whatever that's between my agents and upper management. And that was that. KJ got about 3, 4, maybe 5 questions. It was a super short, sweet, to the point. And that's not to say, right, KJ's still, buddy. He's still amicable with the rest of the guys on the roster. He still went through all his regular media day routines and doing all the hype photos. And there were behind the scenes looks of him and Jae'Sean, jumping up and chest bump in midair, whatever, shoulder bumping for the photo ops and stuff for media day. It's not to say he's being like outcast from the rest of the team or anything, but there's very clearly something going on there. And it's unfortunate that that's kind of what it's come to, but I do not think KJ Martin is long for this team. The media availability did not do anything to remedy those worries whatsoever. And so, yeah, that is probably the one of, if not the bigger takeaways from this, is just that KJ Martin didn't come out and squash any suspicion. He didn't, come out and basically say, no, I'm confident here. I'll earn whatever role Steven Silas wants for me. Like he could have handled media day a million different ways, but deferring to that's between my agents and upper management is just not a super great look. Even though that's like the safe play, that's not a great look when you can, guarantee yourself, be like, no, I'm a part of this team moving forward. I'm here. I want to be here, whatever, all that. So that's that. But it was a jam-packed media day for the Houston Rockets. All of the media availabilities, the super long form version is available on the Houston Rockets website page, but you got to click through and sift through to find different guys. If you want the separated media availabilities, all of those are up on my new media YouTube account. The link is in the episode description. Go check it out. Go subscribe. I posted all the interviews there. You can go tune in individually, see what players had to say. There is a lot that players had to say that I didn't get a chance to talk about, get to in this very podcast. I'm sure I even missed out on some potentially important stuff. But again, we're going to circle back, revisit it. These were just all these standout moments that I had that I drafted some notes for, wanted to make sure that I hit on. And I'm not perfect. I'm not a superhero either. Like KPJ said, I probably, missed on a couple points here or there. But again, we will revisit those points as we circulate throughout training camp and throughout the week, all that good stuff. But as always, thank you so much for checking out the show. If you haven't done so yet, please consider subscribing wherever you get your podcasts. That's Apple, Spotify, Google, the Odyssey app, free and available on all podcast platforms. Also, check us out on YouTube. Go to YouTube, search Locked On Rockets. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. We look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.